There's not a lot of organizations at all that have anything out there that are going, you're young, but you can still do it. And that is really hard to find. And, if this can be a little bit of piece of advice, that's what we're here for. That's why we did this. We did this for ourselves, but we also did this so that people can see this and go, well, it's not something that I need to graduate from optometry, wait 10, 15 years and then go into it. You can actually do it with the right process, with the right people, with all your cards aligned, with all the hard work that you're doing.
Welcome to The Focused View, the podcast for eye care professionals across Australia. In each episode, we bring together leaders from optometry, optical dispensing, and business to share insights, practical strategies, and the latest developments shaping independent practice today. I'm your host, Michael Nasser, and together we'll explore how innovation, collaboration, and smart business thinking can drive growth, enhance patient care, and strengthen the future of independent optometry. Whether you're a student, an early career professional, or an established practice owner, The Focused View is your go-to source for knowledge, inspiration, and connection. The Focused View is brought to you by Vision Connection, supporting independent eye care professionals across Australia through collaboration, education, and business growth. By working closely with leading suppliers and industry partners, Vision Connection offers unique opportunities that help independents stand out and succeed. To find out more, visit their website, visionconnection.com.au.
So you pick your location, you know where you're at, then I guess the work begins with regards to, all other aspects of getting things going. So once, and we don't see that, we see only the finished product from our point of view. What were some of those challenges once you made a decision to where to be in that lead up, that first year, in terms of setting it all up? What were some of the unexpected challenges you had to deal with along the way? Can you highlight a few of those for us?
Yeah, the main one, which is probably maybe obvious or not to people, would be the financial side of things. And that was where a lot of the rejection came into it as well, because we were young optometrists. We're only a year and a half out of our career right now. And so people don't take you seriously in what you're actually wanting to fulfill in the business and everything too. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges that we really had to face. And that was one of the biggest things that we just kept pushing to, because we wanted to make sure that we could actually go out there and get what we wanted as well. And so, when one rejection came in, you have to go back to the drawing board and you have to continue going like that then. But it's also little things like, all right, how do I start with what lenses am I meant to use? Where are they sent off to? What frames are going to be great for the area? I remember we used to just sit in the shopping centre and maybe just do a bit of observation to see, what's going through, who's walking in and out, things like that. You have to take it on board yourself and to actually do that research yourself, because you can read a report. That's great. You're still going to get knowledge from it. But at the end of the day, you really want to have that little bit of a lived experience to know what's coming through and everything. And I think one of the biggest challenges too was that we were still working full-time whilst we were setting up this practice too. So it wasn't like you had all day every day to work on it. You're still working and you're going to be working hard for anyone and anywhere we were. We were determined optometrists that we're not going to be slacking off where we were, regardless of what you're thinking of doing it within the future. The time was a challenge. Finding time was a challenge because we were full-time optoms. You're still working 5 days a week. You're still kind of wanting to have maybe a little bit of a social life, wanting to get out there and go to do fun things as much as we could have at that time of the 2021, I think it was. So that was probably a huge challenge too, because the knowledge, when you get the knowledge, when you're finding the knowledge, when you're finding the people, that will come, and it will also come with time too. But finding the time to then learn about everything was also challenging for
sure.
us.
And you said that going into it, you were thinking about lenses, you were thinking about frames, you were thinking about I guess maybe even fit out decisions. And I mean, we've not necessarily so much on the legals. I want to touch on partnerships next and the formation, and I guess what that looked like as well. But more of those decisions that you were making early on, obviously if you look back now compared to what you thought when you first opened up, are they still the same? Or as in, was the research then spot on, or have you pivoted and changed in the sort of 5 years since everything sort of happened?
Bit of both, I would say. I think that we did have really good documentation that did really good job with giving us foundation knowledge and with what we had also built up to. However, there are many things that after being open for nearly 4 years now that have completely shifted in what we thought and what we think and stuff. Because I think originally we thought that we could open this practice, yes, for the community itself in Greenvale and broader too, but we didn't actually realize just how much broader. And there are a lot of people around Victoria, I'd say, who do travel to come and see us, which is awesome. But I think that was a huge thing that we just didn't even think of and didn't even comprehend, because we were so, this is our community, this is what we're going to do here in the community too. And then you realize people are actually watching and want something more regardless of where they are located, and they're willing to go and get that if they can see it somewhere else. Yeah.
And are you speaking there, and because I want to touch this a little bit later on too, the niching that you've basically been able to do for yourselves, and the people that are willing to travel are the people that are coming for the niche that you guys offer?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit as we get going too, but just because that's a really powerful observation, and especially as an independent, I think that's a really important part of it all. But one thing that's just as important, in my opinion, is the partnership. And you've already mentioned Ebru a lot. Obviously, it probably wouldn't have happened if you guys weren't in partnership.
Yeah.
How important was the partnership for you in making this possible? And I feel like I know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And I guess, how did you go about forming it, creating it? How did you divide responsibilities? Like, how did you determine the early things with regards to, clinical versus the business roles? Is someone going to do this or that? Like, again, not knowing what you look like when you started, if you had a dispenser, did you guys manage that and say, I'll do the dispense for your patients if you're consulting to give you time? How did that all look? And you guys have not unique, I guess, in our industry, but the fact that you were two optoms also speak to that as if you could speak to that as a foundational partnership, how that's benefited and how that's helped, and maybe some hurdles that you have to deal with along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the beginning, you're very right, because a lot of the times, and sometimes in independent and corporate, I guess you don't find two optometrists as partners too. But I think from the beginning, we knew that we were definitely going to be in a partnership with this. I think one of the most important things when you are in a partnership is understanding your partner and understanding what your partner's strengths and weaknesses are. And I think from early days, we really sat down and understood this with one another too. And I think that made that process even easier, because there are many things that I am better at, and it's okay to admit that I'm better at it. And there are many things that she is also better at too.
Yeah.
And knowing those strengths is how and why we work so well together. Because now coming into this, starting from the process of building everything up sort of 5 years ago now, we just immediately know who's your person to go to for something. And that, I think, is probably the biggest thing. And one of the hurdles was learning that side of things too. Right. Because you know what your strength is, but then you learn that actually the other person does it better. And that might hurt a little bit of yourself to be like, oh, I thought I was good at this, but maybe not then. And so that I think in itself has been such a positive, but it was also a hurdle, because we really had to understand one another really well. And I'm not just talking about just in a friendship way. You're understanding how you are as optometrist, you're understanding how you are as a business owner, how you are interacting with your patients, with your staff. All these kind of things is super important too. But to also know that you are a team at the end of the day, and we're both working for the same goal, and we're both working to make sure that this place is as successful as we can too, and to keep it as successful as we can. So I think that was probably the early days partnership of learning how to do what we do now. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, and I guess from what I said, good partners are not good. It's both good at the same thing, because that would make maybe a very strong partnership, because you're both strong at the one thing. It's like, well, who's doing the other? Whereas if you can balance that out and say, we understand what we're good at, what we're not good at, and it's completely different things. Let's focus on those. In turn, the offering of the partnership becomes a lot more powerful.
Yeah.
You've said that you will have hurdles, and I would imagine you've had some tough conversations, and it's like any relationship, to be fair, where you're like, this is either going to make us or break us. And obviously you need those combos, because you need to know that you can, I would imagine there was a honeymoon period. It was all ideas. It was great. It was wonderful. Like in any standard relationship, whether it's a business or personal.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be that hurdle, right? There's going to be the first, that's an argument. Like we're literally, we're bumping heads now. And it's like, it's the way that you recover from that. Absolutely. That then shows you the strength of the relationship, and then solidifies everything going forward. And actually, I had an interesting conversation with a lady called Kelly from Murray Bridge. She's an optom. I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but she's been in the same situation. She's been in business for quite a while now, and they started like that. And there's some hurdles that she's spoken about that you don't even see early on, because as families get involved, and married kids, and husbands, and they can effectively maybe things can happen. And so I guess it's having that foundational ability to be able to communicate is what gets you through things. And that's just as much that's the time part, I guess, and being on the same page. But when you have a look at your roles from the beginning to now, have they evolved much, or are you still kind of doing the same things that you guys were both strong in from the outset?
No, I do think that they have definitely evolved. And I think they've evolved for the better, for sure. So at the beginning, we did do a lot of shared roles, because it was quite important for both of us to understand everything that was going on in the business, until you get to the point where you're both insanely busy and you just need to go, you're doing this, you're doing that. Every now and again we just touch base and make sure that we're on the same page, and we just report. It's almost like you're reporting back to your partner, but in such a healthy way, in the sense of you trust that person, that their role and what they're doing is done incredibly, and vice versa too. So I do think that things have changed, but definitely because we have grown and we've now understood what needed to be changed too. And, I think in another 5-10 years time, the same thing's going to happen again. Sure. Yeah. And that also comes into incorporating more staff within the business too. So you are able to then include them in some of the responsibilities too, because they're all perfectly capable of doing that as well. And they're wanting to, because lucky for us, we have incredible staff that want to watch this business grow as much as we do as well. Yeah.
And that's exactly what my next question was going to be. Obviously you started it all, you formed it, you've done really well, but if you're having success, and you guys were, a team starts to roll out of that. Yes. And you need to start recruiting and getting, and we've discussed, in our pre-interview, the importance of the front of house and how important the dispensing team is to what you guys are offering there. How did you approach that side of the business? Because that's probably one of the harder ones that you're not well versed in at this stage. How did you tackle that challenge from the idea of recruiting through to training, through to cultural, settings? How did that all work for you?
Right. I think recruiting is maybe one of the scariest parts of owning a business, because you care so much about what's happening. Your partners and your business partners and stuff are caring so much about what's happening within the business and want it to thrive. It's almost like offering that care to somebody else is really difficult. So I think that was one of the hardest things for us to do, is not necessarily let go because we knew that we needed the help. It was actually just trying to find the right people for it. And we, lucky for us, have found incredible staff who do share that same vision. And when you're in the optom room and you hear them talking to a patient about how they're loving it and how much their vision is here to, that's the best thing that you can hear. So you're very right, recruitment is quite difficult. Our process, we actually have hired people that we have known in the past who are incredible at what they do, that are within the industry, and we're just looking for something different, and really came on board into the environment. And we knew that how they were previously in their work and their personalities was really going to match the cultural environment that we have created here within the business. And I think it is really important, because you could have someone who is incredible at what they're doing, but at the end of the day, you do need somebody that gets along with the rest of the team and understands how that business is run, what kind of patients are coming through the door, that kind of thing. And here, particularly at our business, personality is huge. We have big personalities coming in as patients, and then all of us on the team also have our individual personalities. And I think letting people shine in that way is super important because, and I know we've spoken about this previously, is people come into the store wanting to speak to our other staff members, not necessarily even to us.
Yeah.
And
That's a win.
Yeah, and it's a huge win. It is so beautiful to see that they also have such a beautiful relationship in themselves. It doesn't have to be about you, and it shouldn't have to always be about you too. And I think that is something that Ebru and I really discussed in the beginning of what we really wanted to do. And that is a scary part of it, because you can say it as much as possible, but being able to find people to then bring that into life is very tricky and very hard and very scary. And so we're very lucky and very, very fortunate to have those incredible people. And, they come with vast knowledge. And it's something that I do speak about quite a lot, is working as a team. And I don't just mean working as a team as understanding, what this person does and everything. It's actually working as a team to know how well their knowledge is and their skill set is. Because that's one of the most valuable things in a business, is to know what other people's capabilities are, because they can be so much better than yours. And you should be okay that they're better than yours too, because they're only there to make the business better too. And it's great. I think it's what makes it really, really smooth sailing for our patients.
You mentioned you knew the dispensers, so I guess having that prior knowledge of who they were can help you a lot with being strategic in recruiting a person that you think is going to be successful, knowing what you know about the organization, the customers, the patients, all that sort of thing. And that's being strategic in that fashion, I think can help a lot. Something that you mentioned to me before was, the importance of empowering dispensers within the practice and really, giving them the tools that they need to be confident and successful and valuable. Is that something that you naturally knew going into it? Is it something that you learned over time? And how do you do that? Like, how do you empower them?
I think it's something that maybe I didn't know, but really had to grow on as business ownership came into fruition, to be honest. And I think that actually came from when we first opened our doors. Ebru and I were doing that sort of dual role. So we were optometrists and we were dispensing. And then once we had staff actually come within the practice there, it was understanding these staff menus. You do value them for the work that you're doing, but then you have more conversations with them and you hear ideas that they have and things that they're wanting to do and what they think is working really well, because your front of house staff are your eyes and ears, and because you're going to be majority in the room with your patients.
That's true.
They are your eyes and ears, and understanding that they are watching what's going on more than you are. So they actually are seeing, okay, small example, this frame brand, great, working. This one's not. How about we do this? I think this might be a little bit better too. So it's allowing them the freedom in the space of their work, and the impact that they have, I think, is so important, because I think that's why retail spaces do thrive, is having people that really understand that and love what they're doing, because the more they love it, the more they're going to thrive in that environment too.
I mean, they do represent the majority of the income that comes into the practice.
Absolutely.
Between 60 and 70% of the income generated come from the sale of frame lenses. And so, and they are generally responsible for that in some capacity. So, they have a huge role to play. So, being able to give them those tools so that they can execute on the strategy and deliver what they need to, I think is super critical. And the fact that you've observed that and you've got the ability to recognize that as an important factor then just creates that culture where they do inherently become integral and they know that they're important. And I think that they just, hopefully the right person will warm into that and then grow. Do you think that dispensers are often under-recognized in the industry? And what are your thoughts on that overall? And I guess, how do you approach the training and the ongoing, management of dispensers in your practice?
Look, I do think that they are undervalued, and it can come from a place of stores being really busy, or they might be overworked or anything like that too, or it could come from maybe a lack of training or something like that. But I think the biggest problem is that people come into any optometrist store, to be honest, and they think, the optoms are the experts and no one else is in the store.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the public is sort of having that image. And I think that is essentially why they are undervalued in what they're doing, when in actual fact, there are plenty incredible dispensers out there that have an insane amount of knowledge, probably a lot more in certain aspects than some optometrists too. I'm the first one to admit when I don't know a lot of things, and I even will say that to a patient and say, how about we actually get so-and-so's opinion or something? And they love that too. They also love that it's not just you that knows what they're doing, it's somebody else that knows it as well. So yeah, I do think there is definitely an undervalue for them. And I think, and I guess Ebru and I always wanted to create a space that everyone is valued in the business, not necessarily just the owner or just the optometrist and stuff, because you're a team at the end of the day and you're all working towards the same goal. So knowing the value of every single member of a team, no matter who it is just so important. And I hope that even if we're just sort of a small little step and indication to it, I hope that can be a bigger picture, because I do think our industry needs that for sure.
Well, and I think successful independent practice has to have that same synergy between optom and dispenser, and they are two totally separate professions, although they're in the same industry.
Yeah.
And I think if you work that right and you work that well, they in theory become the lens specialist and the dispensing specialist, whereas you are the consultative specialist and you are the healthcare provider, and that's two separate things. And in the ability of you doing it early on, it obviously is working in your favor because you've got an appreciation of the importance of that role too.
Yes.
And you've seen it firsthand. And so then you can ensure that those people feel appreciated, and then you're empowering them to be better, which in turn allows you to trust your team better and have a more overall well-balanced and a better delivering team, which it sounds like you have. When it comes to your niche, and I've been, looking forward to talking about this part because I know you guys are really sort of, passionate about this. And as an independent, I think one of the main areas of benefit is, and what you mentioned earlier, being able to do what you want to do and consult in the way you want to consult, and that includes the kind of patients that you choose to see. Ideally, you've got a niche that you found. Can you speak to that? And how did you go about finding that niche, and how have you developed it? I guess over the 4 to 5 years that the business has been in practice.
So my business partner Ebru has always had this niche, and this niche is in pediatrics. So she has worked within the field and within the area for a really, really long time, and has developed such a huge passion for it. And then as I was sort of going through my early career, that is when my interest sparked. So my interest didn't really spark as much as university did, as hers did. But mine sort of started as I started my career. And we do have a huge passion in pediatrics and pediatrics health and children's eye care. I think as an overall, we believe that it gets put in the too hard bracket. They think kids equals too hard, or too much time, or too much energy, or anything like that. And I think that is a huge thing that we're seeing within the industry. And number two, kids do take up a little bit more time because obviously they're children and you do need patience with them too. And there are plenty other places that just don't have time. And it's obviously not their fault. It's how their practices are run and everything like that. Or number three, they just might not have any interest in it too. And so we've really had this spark and this interest, and we really saw, and especially within the areas that we are now practicing in, is that there is not a lot of optometrists that are having that interest. So we really wanted to build up on that. We love to see kids, and a lot of our days are filled with seeing kids. I think it's something so rewarding when you do see a child growing up, whether or not they need any sort of correction or help or anything like that, in terms of their vision. It is just so important to see them and give them and provide them a space that they also feel comfortable into. And so that is something that we've always made sure that we've done from the beginning, even if it was starting off with a parent or a grandparent or anything like that too, is actually providing a space for a child to know that they are heard, because they think there's this misconception of, oh, you've only got to talk to the parent and hear what they have to say, or the guardian or whatnot. Whereas when you actually sit down and have a conversation with a lot of kids, they'll talk. They'll want to talk.
Yeah.
Allowing them the space to it. I remember us having a conversation also with another optometrist too, who does work a lot in the pediatric care. And I remember him actually saying, you know, let the kids talk, you know, they communicate that with you, and it makes them feel so much comfortable. And that was a huge thing of when we were starting up this practice, as to it really shaped the time of how long our appointments are going to be, or what we could offer, equipment that we're going to get. We wanted to make sure that, yes, we can provide for the community of all ages, but we also have that niche to make sure that when a child is walking into the room, that they are in a space that is helpful and good for them as well. We've just sort of grown with that. We found so many new opportunities that are out there that are specializing within, I guess, children, and then jumping on that chance to say, hey, listen, we're also kind of doing something similar. Let's team up, or anything like that. And it really adds to the passion of the work, and it adds to wanting to continue, because you see what an impact you can really truly make on this generation, where we are learning so much more about this new generation, screens and gaming and this and that, and everything is completely different. And knowing that you can just give your little 2 cents, a little bit of help is truly, truly great.
Yeah, and I guess what comes across when you speak about it is the passion that you clearly have for it. And I think that transcends business, and it works more towards that fulfillment of what you're doing, and the joy that you get from doing that. And there's obviously then a commercial benefit out of that, but approaching it in the way that you have, with the passion that you have, it's not, you probably feel like you're not going to work when you're doing it because you love what you do so much, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're constantly talking about, if we see a kid that we saw maybe a year or two ago, and we're like, oh my God, they've grown up so much. Like, I'm becoming that auntie now. Saying, you're watching them grow up, or you remember when you were this little, like, you feel like you're that person, but you truly understand that now, because you get to actually have those touch points. So you get to ask them, how was your basketball tournament, or, how's graduation, and those kind of things. I think it's super impactful, and it does make work that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it's just that there's so much positivity in that, because they will grow up and they will be patients forever. And so, you haven't probably even thought it, well, maybe you have, but there is so much, you're helping them in ways that they haven't probably received anywhere else, and they are potentially going to be patients for life. And then there's a whole community that will come in and support that. And I guess I wanted to touch on the importance of the community and the involvement that they've played in the direction of your business. And I guess if you can speak to how that's evolved now, knowing, what you've developed, I guess a bit more insights with regards to what's driving you guys.
We knew how incredible the community here in Greenville really was from the beginning, just having people that were part of the communities here, knowing what that was like too. We didn't really know the true impact until maybe now, and it might even still grow.
Yeah.
Now what is so beautiful about it is, you're walking in the shopping center, you can say hi to anyone and they're willing to have a conversation with you, or they're talking about, what has happened over the weekend and stuff, knowing that they're your patients for life too. You see these people constantly, but also what I think is the biggest thing, and truly works in a lot of businesses, is word of mouth has been our best friend. And it's easy to be nice.
A happy parent, I'll tell you what, they've got a network in themselves, and so you're keeping them and the kids happy.
Absolutely.
You can only imagine the benefit.
And I think it is a huge impact too, because their network is huge in itself, and we don't even know how big their network is within the schools, within the kindies, all that kind of stuff.
And Facebook forums and all the mum community groups.
One great experience, 1 or 2 great experiences goes a long way for them. And I think that was something we didn't truly realize until now. We're seeing it, and we're saying this person is recommended, or we're family friends with these guys, and this, that, and we're hearing that. Is really lovely to hear that too, is that knowing that they've had a good experience, but then they've gone off and actually shared it with somebody else. that's not something that you're telling people to go and talk about, but then literally going and having those conversations, it's super impactful and super powerful. So, I love it when I think I just had it literally a couple of days ago when I had a kid ask me, oh, do you know this person? They just came in last week to see you. And the parents saying, oh, they're the ones that told us to come here. It's one of the nicest and greatest things to hear that too, knowing that they've had such a good experience. And, we have created this space to then give them that good experience too, because we're allowing them the time, we're allowing them the space. That was one of the biggest things for us when we started off, is we know we needed to do this because we as practitioners where we were working were not able to. It wasn't able to provide them with the space that they needed to. I wasn't able to provide them with the time that they required and needed as well. So I'm so happy that we're actually, sticking to that and giving them that too.
Yeah. Well, it's back to that concept that you started off with, saying you wanted to be the practitioner you wanted to be, and this is how you do it. Can I ask a question on, and this is not one I thought of until now. How do you balance the commercial part of the business here? Because you said there's time, and there's you've got to allow the time for pediatrics and for children, but we are obviously in an industry that is so prevalent with KPIs and chair time, and the consultation time is being X amount of times, X amount of minutes, and go and rush and convert. And obviously with children, it's not the same way.
Yep.
You can't have that mindset, I believe, true to be successful in it. So how do you balance the commercial nature of the business, knowing that you've got bills to pay as well, when you can't just be a service there that's just chatting away all day, forming relationships? How do you manage that side of the equation?
Yeah, really good question. And I do think this is something that we are still learning as we go onto this journey. But a few things that we have sort of learned is making sure that we are balancing our days in clinic. So the entire day is not necessarily only dedicated to one generation versus this versus that.
Yeah.
I think that has been a huge help for us to learn that too, because at the beginning you don't know, you're just sort of thinking these people want an appointment, next available, and then your days are just being constant health or kids or anything like that. So I do think diary management was a huge impact on that sense there. That has really helped us get through to the next step of saying, we're actually managing this really well. There is always going to be that little thing at the back of your mind to be like, oh, at the end of the day, you do need to make money. It is a business.
Yeah.
The day too.
Yeah.
But I think the patient base that we do have still equates to that as well. We do have the people that are coming in that do require those extra services.
You've got that naturally.
Yeah, and I think that is the way that it balances out in itself, to know that we have a niche that we are doing. However, that's not to say that we don't do anything else too. And I do think people recognize that, in the sense that and I think that is how we have grown, to be honest, because a lot of the times they do hear that we do see predominantly peds and children. However, then we have seen the parent and we've also seen the grandparents. So it's that natural saying that okay, we are targeting, I guess, or essentially we are more looking at that generation. However, there's a whole another aspect that still is coming.
So, absolutely. And if you go back to your passion, or one of the passions, which is the pediatric side of things, and it's important to balance, obviously, both sides of the ledger, the passion and the dollars.
Yes.
But obviously the passion for me is a big driving force. And, we've spoken about initiatives like the school screening program that you've got, that you're part of. I think is it called Glasses for Kids?
Glasses for Kids, yeah.
Can you speak more about that and how that initiative was formed, and how what it entails, and the sort of things that you're doing, and the benefits that you get out of it, both from a philanthropic type of scenario, but also, anything else that you might
I actually had a friend of mine that was working at a different independent optometrist who was part of the Glasses for Kids program, and this was actually I think it's just after we had opened up our practice. I was just sort of really interested in it. I said, what is this program? What are we hearing? And then once I found out more about it, instantly I was like, oh, this is definitely something that we want to be a part of too. The program essentially goes to primary schools here around Victoria. It did start out as low socioeconomic, but we have had a budget increase within the program, which has been phenomenal. So we're absolutely able to go to a lot more primary schools, which is great. And they do vision screening for prep to grade 3 in these schools. And if they require, they actually get a free pair of glasses through the program too. And I think just knowing the impact that that can make on a family itself is just probably the best thing that you hear. And I could sit here talking about it for hours and hours and telling you how many beautiful stories I have from being part of this program for the past 2-3 years now. But it is truly a passion project, but it's also so rewarding as well, knowing that you are giving back to the community in any way, shape, and form. And yes, some of them may come back into the clinic afterwards, after you've been to the school and said, we found this, and then they come back to. There is that benefit to it, but there's no pressure for it, of course. You're just hoping that you're doing the right things and hoping that they can take their child wherever they go to the care that they need as well. But I'll tell you a story from that as well, is that I remember I was at a school, and this was probably early last year, and I was testing a little girl from prep. She just turned 5 years old, or maybe a few weeks into school, and she was definitely needed glasses. And she was about -3 or so in her prescription, which is quite high for her age. And I remember I put on the glasses, and she was tearing up, and I thought, oh, maybe it's the lenses are too strong or the glasses are there. And she turned around to me and said, I can see my mom now. And the entire room, we all just went, oh my God. So an impact like that is why life-changing for her as well. And so it was a no-brainer to be a part of this program too. And since then, the team there has grown. I work quite closely with the team there at Glasses for Kids, and they're doing incredible things just across Victoria. Fingers crossed that we can make this national at some point. That would be great.
No, I wanted to touch back on that as well, because I feel, for students that are listening, or, early, sort of young optometrists that are listening, the ability for you to be able to create that environment that, that you are so passionate about, where you are walking into an environment where you don't feel like you're at work. It's almost the core cry for why you've been independent.
Absolutely.
And the power of independence, because it is the independent environment that allows you to do what you're doing in the way that you're doing. And it's not to say that you're not going to get it anywhere else, but that's the real essence and the real power of it. And you're harnessing that, and you're seeing the benefit of it. And it just changes, I believe it changes who you are, and the way you live your life. So I think that's the really powerful thing about the profession and the opportunity that the profession presents. And at uni, you probably wouldn't have even thought twice that this would be possible.
Absolutely. And I think even at uni, I didn't even know what I really wanted to, and if I really wanted to have sort of an interest within a field of optometry. And as I got,
and now you probably couldn't picture it any other way.
Exactly.
It's powerful. And what's even more powerful in your story is you're only sort of 3 or 4 years in. And it's like, we're having conversations. It sort of feels like you've been in business for 20 years. So the amount of, I guess that points to your business acumen, the maturity into which you conduct the business, which is total credit to you and Ebru with regards to what you're building there. But it does show the opportunity for others. And hopefully, they can sort of fulfill that path as well, if they have that particular passion.
Absolutely.
So if we then sort of highlight this aspect of independence with collaboration and mindset, because I feel like there's so much, I guess, information in this area too that I'd like to touch on. But independence can sometimes mean being isolated. I mean, you've got a partner, so that's a really good thing with regards to breaking that down. But how do you view collaboration within the industry, and how do you approach it, and how important is it as an independent for you to collaborate and to seek others' opinions and thoughts and processes and things like that?
I think it's very, very important. And I think in general, regardless of being independent, corporate, wherever you are working, having a network of people is really, really important, whether that be optometrists, whether that be people within the industry. And I think it comes to the point of knowing that other people's knowledge is so valuable too. And I think through our network, just over the years, meeting other independent business owners who have been in it for, say, 10 years versus 30 years versus bought into a practice in the past couple of years, whatever it is, I think their knowledge is always going to be great, and you're always going to learn from someone too. And so that was probably something Ever and I always had in our mind, to know that you don't have to be alone. And you might be an independent and you might be practicing alone, or, you full ownership and that kind of stuff. But that's not a mindset that you actually have to have, is, oh, I'm alone and I don't have anyone around me. certainly not the case for myself or her at all, because any phone call that we'll make, we know that people are going to pick up their phone and actually answer the questions or have a chat or, hey, how things are going and everything too. And there are those opportunities out there. And if you just go looking for them, you will find them. And so, and it's something that I like to talk about a lot of with a lot of students about is, remember, you're at university, but when you all graduate, you are still all colleagues too. So regardless of where anyone is working, you can still call upon one another, because you never know, someone might have one sort of experience versus something else that can help you with whatever you are doing. So it is important to sort of understand that. And I've had plenty of people that we went to uni with that, maybe they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing, but we've touched base between it and everything. I have a lot of them who are now working in the Glass for Kids program with myself too, who are, university. They're super passionate about it as well, and they want to be part of it. It's those conversations and that network. You can't think of anything better, because it truly grows you not only as an optometrist, but for myself personally, it grows me as a business owner too. Because I think it's important to also learn what people are looking for, because at some point I will be an employer of an optometrist too. Right now there's just the two of us, but there's always room for growth and everything. And it is so important to understand what is actually going on within the optometry world on an optometry level and on a practicing level, so that you can create spaces for these optometrists to thrive in, say, a different environment or anything like that. So that's where I find that network to be very crucial, is yes, there's the business ownership side of things, but as going back to the core of being an optometrist, you really got to have that network too, so you know what's going on within the industry.
Well, whoever that optometrist is going to be, I feel very fortunate for them when that opportunity presents, because it sounds like it's going to be really like you've created an amazing space, it seems. And so whoever that optometrist may be, like I said, they're going to be very lucky whether they realize it or not from an early point of view. So something that's come across to me in the conversation that we've had, prior and to date, is your positive attitude and the way that it seems like you're approaching challenges and you're just getting things done. Mindset, I think, plays a really important part with how we approach things. Can you speak to me with regards to how you view mindset? What do you do to ensure that you're able to kick the goals that you've been kicking and, being as successful as you've been? How would you summarize that, and how do you approach that, I guess, for people that are listening, so they can understand a little bit of what makes it work for you?
Yeah, I am, for myself, to keep a balanced life is very important. So there is the business side of things, there's the optometry side of things, but there's a whole aspect of life. And I think being a business owner or working in healthcare or whatever you are doing, it is really important to have a network of people that maybe are not necessarily doing the same things as you. You have your close family, you have your close friends, or you have your interests that are outside of that. And I believe that has really helped myself, because I know when I do need to be business orientated or have those kind of conversations, but I can also talk to you about what we're doing on the weekend or what the scores were for the tennis or something like that. And that, I think, is probably the biggest help in mindset, because you're going to take work home at some point, but that is one rule that Ebru and I try and have, is to not do that as much as we can. That sort of mindset and having that balance is why I feel like I can stay on top of things and stay positive about things, because I do have a whole nother life that is filled with travel, it is filled with sport and gym and Pilates and family and friends and everything that I've surrounded myself with, to know that my life and life in general doesn't always necessarily revolve around work and business. The passion comes because I spend a good amount of time on it and I know what I need to do to continue to love it. But there's a whole nother aspect of it that I do think that is really important, and you shouldn't have to let go of that just because you are an And so that was also a big thing. I had a uni lecturer tell me once that he believes my positive mindset is because I played a lot of sport and used to do performing when I was a child and like performing on stage. I remember my uni lecturer was like, it's probably because of that, because you were always very determined and you had a goal and you needed to do that. And I was like, now that I think about it, I'm like, he's probably very right on that too. But I think that balanced lifestyle, and I have spoken to a lot of optometrists and independent business owners about this too, about what they do and how they balance it as well, because I think that's probably the most important thing in business ownership, to then stay positive about.
Yeah. And I think even in conversing with you to this point, I mean, I feel you're very strategic in what you do. So I feel like, the ability to recognize that early on, especially at the stage of the career that you're at, is super powerful, because you can ensure you don't. And I think that the younger generation are really mindful about mental health and total well-being. And, whereas, generations before us, it was different. And that's just like I said, a generational, a result of the environment. And so you burn out and things like that, which would have occurred 10, 15, 20 years ago. It may still happen now, but we have this, ability to, now, if you have the ability to control the ship that you're in. We were speaking earlier on about, a lot in the industry, there's a lot of, agitation around, burnout in certain environments, because they're not perhaps in control and they're being told what to do. So it's another tick for independence. But just in the act of knowing that you need to have that balanced lifestyle, because I'd probably put forward that a lot of independent optoms don't have that balanced work. I mean, I know it's a challenge I've got every day of the week, and I don't win it, to be fair with you. But, but just to know that it's on the radar, I think is powerful in its own right, because, it's an important factor. So it's a really good take point from that point of view. If we're speaking to students in early career optoms here, if they're listening and they're thinking about ownership, what are one or two practical steps that they could take now to help them in that journey? And again, that's more broadly, I guess, stated for whether they're a student or a young optom.
Yes.
What do you think? What would you tell them?
Well, I think, and I'll sort of play on my experiences, it came a lot from listening and learning, just listening to the industry itself and how the industry is running and going and different directions that it's going to. It was about conversations with optometrists, regardless of where they were working and regardless of whether they were business owners or not, because I think that there is so much knowledge to get from those who are still not in independent and those who are not business owners too. Although that has its own little bracket of people that are really sort of important in the journey, there is a whole nother aspect of optometrists, and not just optometrists. Let's go with the dispensing, let's go with the managers, let's go with ophthalmologists, let's go in the world of eyes. There is so much around there that I do think listening to what people have to say creates opportunities and gives you the vision of what you're wanting to do as well, because there are plenty of people out there that are doing incredible things. And if you're just thinking there's just one pathway, I don't think that's the right mindset anymore. And I do think a lot of students are having a different mindset on things, because they are a little bit more open to more opportunities out there too. And that would be my little bit of piece of advice too. And it's the business ownership. I think that there are incredible people like yourself who are out there really promoting young optoms and young business owners. And there are not a lot of people out there doing that. To be honest, there's not a lot of organizations at all that have anything out there that are going, you're young, but you can still do it. And that is really hard to find. And, if this can be a little bit of piece of advice, that's what we're here for. That's why we did this. We did this for ourselves, but we also did this so that people can see this and go, well, it's not something that I need to graduate from optometry, wait 10, 15 years and then go into it. You can actually do it with the right process. With the right people, with all your cards aligned, with all the hard work that you're doing. It is not an impossible goal. When it may have seemed like that a while ago, whereas I don't think that it is anything that is in that too hard bracket. I think it is.
Well, you mentioned 10 to 15 years, and in the conversations I've had with, I don't know if you've heard of young optometrists, they're an organisation in New South Wales and ACT. So, they have basically found that wherever you're at 5 years out after uni is where you end up. So if you're in corporate at the 5-year point, you're basically going to probably be in corporate. Now, that's not always the case, but a generalization. Same thing with independence. If you're in independent at the 5th year out, you're statistically much higher chance of staying in independence. So, it's not even, it's like, if it's something you want to do, it's something that you need to be strategic about as early on as you can be. And you pointed out the fact that there aren't that many, organizations or entities or groups that are out there, pitching that to the students. And that's something I've identified, and it's something that we're working towards because, invariably I've obviously got commercial interests in some of the businesses that I have and I operate, but the fundamental motivation here is not for that. It's because there is a massive opportunity. And,
Absolutely.
We don't need to push a particular business or a particular, methodology here. And you'll never generally hear me say anything about the businesses that I'm associated with.
Mm-hmm.
But the fundamental core is that independence is a massive growth area, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And there is so much opportunity there. And you are the perfect example of that, And so to see that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel as a young optom.
No.
It's out there. You've got to learn and you've got to find, and people like yourself are willing to share even what you've been through. And it's so relatable. And, the good ideas are the ideas that is like, oh my God, you've solved world hunger. Like, don't get me wrong. That's a good thing to be doing too.
Mm-hmm.
This is like when it's laid out to you, it's like, oh, is that all I need to do?
Yeah.
That's it, right?
That's it.
It might be big tasks, but it's not as daunting as you make it out to be.
Yes.
People have done it.
People have done it. Exactly. People have done
Cool.
it, and they've done it at different stages of their career. And I think that's a really good message for young optometrists to know that, it is definitely something that is achievable.
It's doable.
That is something that you are wanting or looking towards.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure. And I guess as we sort of wrap this all up, and I've really appreciated your time and your insights. It's been super inspiring and super helpful. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people that are listening to this that are going to take something away from it.
Yeah.
But as we close off, if you look back at, and you can rewind the clock, what's one thing you wish you knew earlier on, or maybe even if we pitch it in the way of what would there be something that you would do different?
Yeah.
Looking back on it all now in what we've spoken about and the things that, your journey has led you to this point, what would be one thing that you would change or something that you understood that would make things easier for you now if you had, knowing now what you know now and going back in time and using that bit of knowledge that you've acquired?
I know that we've sort of discussed a little bit about this, but I would have loved to do something more in the world of business. I would have loved to come into this knowing more about the nitty-gritty business side of things, because I think as an optometrist, you can pick up on skills. You can learn how to be a better practitioner with pushing yourself in the ways and the capabilities that you can. However, it is very hard when you have a health mindset and you've learned to have a health mindset through university and also through your work to change that mindset into a business mindset. And I think that's the one thing that if you took me back to the time where we were building this business, I actually would have gone somewhere and said, I want to do some sort of online course and everything and a little bit about it. And now, yes, I've had lived experience. And now that I've had lived experience, that spark still hasn't gone. I still
it's a continuum.
It is a huge continuum to actually learn about that, because yes, we are in optometry business and yes, we are in the health space, but I do think that in the world of business, there is a lot to learn from even hospitality or any of those big businesses, retail or makeup or whatever you're talking about. They're doing something right somewhere else too. And you can take some of that and bring it into your business as well. So I would look at it in maybe not necessarily the health side of things, but I would look at it as more of a business side of things. I would have loved to do it. And that's sort of something that Emma and I have spoken about even recently now, to go, how can we excel a little bit more in that area so that we can those concepts that work in our values of this practice to then lift it to the next level too. So I think that's still an open door, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. No, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Like I said earlier, and I'll say it again, thank you so much for your insights and all your thoughts. I mean, full credit to you with what you've done and what you've been able to achieve. It's really inspiring, and it obviously speaks volumes with regards to your ability and your skill sets and how you've been able to build what you're building. And I'm sure you're going to be really successful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that from the sideline. So good luck.
I appreciate this as well. It's always been fantastic to chat to you over these past couple weeks and everything as well. And would like networkers will definitely keep in contact as well.
For sure. But I appreciate your time, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Not a problem.
Thanks for listening to The Focused View. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please leave a 5-star review, subscribe on your preferred podcast app, and share it with your colleagues. It helps us reach more eye care professionals across Australia. For additional resources and downloads, visit thefocusedview.com.au. I'm Michael Nasser. Until next time, keep focused.